morning, Brendan.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining the viewers on live on Independent Land.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. I've got a few questions to ask you, if that's okay. First one, I think, what do you think about the racist and homophobic language used by candidates in the south of England within the last few days?
It's shocking, deeply shocking, but see, when you think about it, it's probably not that surprising, given the direction of travel we've seen in UK politics over the last decade or so. I mean, I remember when I first went into Westminster in 2015, the things that you hear now, you couldn't have imagined anyone standing up and saying. So these people have been emboldened by the behaviour of the right-wing, the extreme right-wing element within the Conservative Party. So language which would have been condemned is no longer condemned, and it's almost been allowed to become mainstream. And that appalling, despicable tirade that we heard on Channel 4 the other night, it is the inevitable consequence.
I will say that Mr. Farage has suggested that is some kind of set-up.
Well, A, it wasn't a set-up. B, I think that guy spoke for so many people in his party. So, sorry? Oh yeah, it's absolutely awful. But where we are, it's the inevitable consequence of not challenging racism, homophobia, bigotry, and almost allowing it to become mainstream. And what we saw in Channel 4 was, I say, the inevitable consequence of what we've seen over the last 10, 15 years in UK politics.
Yeah. The SNP have had an increasing mandate for an independence referendum and Scotland's right to decide. Consistently voted more MPs into Westminster over the last 3 or 4 general elections. We're obviously asking for more to sit in Westminster.
Yeah.
What do you see as the way forward here now in the future?
I mean, I always look at when I joined the SNP in 1979, 1980 as a 16-year-old. I think the SNP were 8-10% in the polls. The idea of independence was for the birds. It was like the fringe of Scottish politics. It was an idea that people talked about but nobody took seriously. So when I look how far our party and our movement has come in those intervening 40 years, it's breathtaking speed. And what gives me hope, great hope, is even when support for the SNP is going down, support for independence is remaining absolutely solid. 50% of people believe in independence. 50%. So there or thereabouts, 50% believe in Scottish independence, which is an absolute sea change. Now, the problem that we have is we've come so far, so fast, and those last few steps are the most difficult because we've now got to get that over the line. And I think the only way that we can get this over the line is to continually making the case for independence. We have to at every turn, not just in politics, not just during election times, but all of us in the movement have a responsibility to talk about independence and the whys of independence. And then we need to strategise the how of independence. But the how of independence can't come until we have that critical mass of people. And that's why, not just in election times, we have to be talking to our friends, our neighbours, our families, our workmates about independence. And I think we have a generational shift as well, that my children's generation, they've never known anything but the Scottish Parliament. Yep. And they cannot see they've got no emotional attachment to the United Kingdom or the supposed past glories of the United Kingdom. Yeah. And we have got to build that future. Now, for folk like me, who's on the wrong side of 60, it can't come quickly enough. but time is on their side. And I don't believe in anything being inevitable, but I cannot see that once a young person has chosen and believed in independence, that somehow is going to go backwards, particularly in the mess, the sinking ship that the United Kingdom currently is.
I think I would absolutely agree with you there in the sense that once you've decided that you want independence for your country, you're not going to change it.
Yeah.
I haven't done like you since I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
We're talking to, without a doubt, a converted audience here. And I think voter apathy is quite possibly a problem going forward.
Well, I don't know if it will be. I think voter apathy in elections, yeah, I think there's a very reasonable debate to be had about are they apathetic about, is it Starmer, is it Sunak? And I don't blame them for being apathetic, but I think what we saw in the referendum was an awakening and this belief that, if you talk about the right issues, then people will engage. The turnout in the referendum was phenomenal. The level of engagement was just staggering.
Many people seem to say that was divisive. Yes, it may well, it may well have had that effect, but it brought out a real pride in our country.
And I would challenge that. I don't think that it was. I don't think it was divisive. Politics is divisive. Democracy is divisive. And if you're not going to, if you're going to say that we can't have discussions because it'll divide people, then there's no point in having a democracy. Democracy is about making decisions, having discussions, and taking a choice. And now, by its nature, it's divisive. But what that brought out, I thought, was the absolute best of Scotland and the best of the Scottish people, and we engaged in a national conversation, the likes of which I have never seen before. And I think if you talk about apathy, then you look at the apathy around election times, and you look at the energy that was created during that referendum. That's what we need to get back.
This is Armed Forces Day today, and rightly so, we should be proud of the Armed Forces.
Absolutely.
Of Scotland and the United Kingdom. Do you agree that Labour's proposed increase on defence spending in relation to GDP should Labour become the next government of the United Kingdom on Friday?
I think for me, you've got to split those things. So absolutely, very proud of the armed forces, and we all should thank everybody who's served in them. The problem with Labour's proposal is that they are choosing to write a blank cheque for Trident. So this isn't about creating a stronger, more efficient, more nimble, agile armed forces. This is about sinking all of that money into the bottomless pit of Trident.
The conventional army has been reduced by
I think the UK now has the smallest standing army since the Napoleonic Wars, and it is getting smaller. And increasingly, with this insane policy on Trident, the UK's so-called last line of defence is becoming its only line of defence. And it's...
And is it even a deterrent?
Well, it's not a deterrent. I think we could, if it was Tony Blair that said that it's unusable, it doesn't act as a deterrent, it can never be used. So basically what Blair was saying was, this is a political weapon. This is a national virility symbol. Doesn't make us safer, and it makes us an awful lot poorer. But it's, as I say, it's a virility symbol for the United Kingdom. Always has been. It has no military use. And that's why Trident is a political weapon,
so it's
not a military weapon.
Trident from Scotland, it's actually removing Trident from the United Kingdom.
Well, I just want Trident out of Scotland. I want no nukes in Scotland. What the rest of the United Kingdom decides to do is really their affair. I would strongly advise, if you want to lift children out of poverty, you want to, reduce or take away the two-child benefit cap, you want to pay the WASPy women, you've got all of these hard choices to make in a shrinking economy, and you write a blank cheque for Trident, you must be off your head if you think that is a sensible use of diminishing resources.
Do you have a preference as to whom, either Mr Sunak or Sir Keir Starmer, as our next Prime Minister?
Like, we've got to get rid of the Tories. We have got to get rid. I mean, they are the worst. I mean, I cannot think of a worse government in my lifetime.
And you're probably speaking to the convicted as
But
well.
they are absolutely, I mean, they are the worst. And so, and I think from an independence point of view, you know, I think that when Starmer comes in, so Starmer is going to come in, and he is thrilled to the Tories' tax and spending plan. He says he won't do anything until growth in the economy occurs, but you can't grow this economy outside of Brexit. So this is austerity on top of austerity on top of austerity in a shrinking economy. Well, I mean, he's made it absolutely clear in his manifesto. No freedom of movement, no single market, no customs union, but we'll grow the economy. But until the economy grows, we'll continue with Tories' spending plans. But I think what that will do, I would sincerely hope that those Scots who believe in independence, who I think completely ill-advisedly are going to vote Labour, will realise that you can't change this system in Westminster. Getting a right-wing Starmer to replace a further right-wing Sunak, it's not going to make a blind bit of difference. Children are going to go hungry. You know, waspy women are not going to get paid. Trident is still going to take up 50+% of the defence procurement budget annually. You know, none of this is going to change. And the idea that Labour can grow this economy is for the birds. You know,
not going to end the cost of living crisis.
it absolutely won't. And I think the way I look at it with Starmer is, I always look at him and think it's the King Canute. You know, that rather than meeting King Canute on the beach and saying, you know, you can't stop the tide, Starmer's coming in and saying to King Canute, hold on, I'll show you how it's done. It's nonsense. You can't do it. You cannot grow the economy outside of Brexit. And if you stick to the Tories' tax and spend, you will continue to stick to them because the economy cannot grow.
Okay, well, just a wee question from one of our viewers. If postal votes are not received by Monday, what should people do?
Oh, I know there are some areas of the country which this isn't an issue. It's a big issue in Argyll and Bute. We have had dozens and dozens of people in the last 24 hours contact us saying they have had postal votes for years. They haven't arrived and they're off on holiday today. Scottish school holidays, and you know yourself, exodus out of Scotland the first day after the school holidays. And so we've had dozens who have contacted us personally, which means for every one that's contacted us, there's probably 50 that haven't. So that's a huge issue. If it hasn't arrived, get onto your council immediately. We are in constant talks with the council to see what's going on.
So this is a council problem?
Well,
this is not just happening in Scotland, is it? This is happening across the whole of the United Kingdom.
it's very isolated. But Argyll and Bute is one of those areas which seems to be pretty badly affected by it. So we've been speaking to the council since Wednesday when we got wind that there could be a problem. And we were kind of told, wait till Saturday. If they haven't arrived on Saturday, get in contact with us. So we have lodged a whole raft of complaints with people who have now left the country and who cannot vote. It's an absolute mess. And if you want a snapshot of how broken and useless the United Kingdom has become, the mother of democracy, as they love to call themselves, can't even run an election. Yeah. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace, and it sums up the mess that the United Kingdom is.
Just thank you, Woodpet, for that question. If there's a long parliament by any chance, as of Friday, would the SNP make any deals with the Labour Party in relation to a potential coalition going forward?
I mean, I suppose there's, I mean, it's unlikely that that would be the case. And if there is, then I would imagine absolutely there would be discussions to be had. But you're asking me a question which is way above my pay grade. And if Stephen is tuning in, he's probably going, what are you saying? What's he going to say? So, I mean, absolutely, I am not naive enough to believe that we would sit in our hands in that situation. What those negotiations would be, as I say, it's for John and for Stephen and others to decide. But the likelihood of that coming to pass is remote, I'm afraid.
What do you think, Brendan, if I might ask you this? There's a real growing crisis with political betting. It appears to be a horrendous scandal that's blown up not only within the Tory party, but also within, and I heard Stephen the other night, I think it was actually last night, suggest that as so far, in touch with the SNP, have not been touched by this. Do you have a comment to make on that? What do you think?
I mean, I think there are.
How do we clean that up?
Well, I think there's two issues. I think, you know, a candidate betting against themselves winning, you know, I suppose it's like, you know, betting against your favourite football team just to take away the pain of them getting beat. Or losing themselves winning against themselves to lose. It's a bit, you know, like taking the pain away if your football team gets beaten. So I think, you know, it's probably not a good look, but I think it's different from using insider knowledge to make a few quid. And I think if we try and conflate both of those things together, then we actually lose sight of what's really important here. I think the important one is people were told the date of the general election and they tried to cash in on it. It's thoroughly reprehensible. And so let's not get caught up in the sort of he voted against himself, he voted or she voted herself to lose. It's not particularly edifying, but the big issue here is people who used knowledge given to them from number 10 to make a few quid, and that has to be rooted out.
It's another step in the ladder of damaging trust and belief in politics.
Yeah, absolutely.
And politicians.
It's the stench of petty corruption and cronyism, and it just
seems like another them, one rule for them, and a rule for the
well, I don't know if it's seen as one rule for them, one rule for everybody else. I think what it should be seen as is these people believe they're untouchable. You know, if you know someone came to me from number 10 and said, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, July the 4th, you'll get 60 to 1 on it. Would I go and put £50 on it? Absolutely not. You know, but the fact that people did, you know, it feeds into that, as you were saying, that whole one's as bad as the other, they're all the same. But I think we've got to be careful here, because people are not all the same. And if you were given that insider knowledge and you cashed in on it, then you should be held to account for it.
How do you, as a politician, hoping to be, how do we go forward and clean up politics and get that respect and belief? And I think that also feeds into, that kind of feeds into another question I had for you. Why do you feel people in Argyll and Bute should put you back in Westminster then?
I mean, I would hope that people in Argyll and Bute would look at my record. I would like to think that I have a reputation for being an extremely hard-working local MP. If people come to me, we will, you know, always do our very, very best for people. I've been visible in this constituency for 9 years. I mean, it's a massive constituency. It is, you know, now to drive from one end of the constituency at the Mull of Kintyre to just south of Mallaig, take you just over 6 hours to drive, and that doesn't include the 23 inhabited islands. So it is colossal. It's absolutely vast. But I have covered every inch of it in the last 9 years. So I hope that my record as someone who works for the good of Argyll and Bute and will always put the people of Argyll and Bute first will be recognised. But I think also the issues in Argyll and Bute, Brexit. Brexit has been catastrophic for this constituency. It's been bad for the UK. It's been dreadful for Scotland. Catastrophic. When your main exports are shellfish, seafood shellfish, and high-end quality provenance guaranteed meats, then Brexit has just blown it out of the water. And our biggest problem here is depopulation and trying to get people to come and live and work and, you know, put down roots and raise a family here. It was all predicated on attracting young, ambitious, entrepreneurial Europeans to come and be part of it. That's all gone. No, and our tourism sector, which depended on, you know, 17 to 21-year-old Europeans coming year after year after year, and another tranche following them year after year. I was in 2 places yesterday, 2 places which are absolutely booming with visitors, but they have to close. Both of these places have to close 2 days a week because they simply cannot get staff, and they cannot get staff because they're historically, we're bringing people in from Europe, young students who'd worked for 3 or 4 years at a time, come back every summer. They're just not there anymore. And these booming businesses are now closing 2 days a week in the height of summer. It's a disaster.
I'm not entirely sure the transport and the roads in Argyll and Bute actually help in some of these matters. That aside, let's move on. How would you encourage the next Prime Minister to deal with Putin's aggression in Ukraine? And also, then, I know you have personally very outspoken about the crisis in Gaza and spoken up, and I'm, for one, very pleased that you have. What would you advise? What would you say to the next Prime Minister?
I would say what the UK has done in Ukraine, compare and contrast that to what the UK has done on Gaza. The UK has imposed sanctions on Russia. It has been part of a worldwide coalition to oppose Putin and his aggression, and yet we are enabling and emboldening and supporting Netanyahu's aggression and genocidal aggression in Gaza.
Notwithstanding what happened on the 7th of October.
Oh no, I mean, I've been categorical with you. What happened, the Hamas's attack on October the 7th was utterly reprehensible. It was, and I have condemned it from day one, and I will always condemn it. But if what Netanyahu's response is now the accepted new norm of self-defence, then the world's in a really dangerous place. If, because of a terrorist attack, a state can launch an attack, a sustained attack on a civilian population using massive bombs, using starvation as a weapon of war, using cutting off water supplies to a civilian population, to displacing millions of people at the drop of a hat. If that, it's almost 40,000 people have been killed. A huge percentage of them are children, huge percentage of them are women. So there is a slaughter of the innocents in Gaza, and you compare and contrast the UK's response to what happened in Ukraine to what's happening in Gaza, then international humanitarian law has to be blind. It has to say, whether it's your friends that are doing it or your foes that are doing it, you have to call it out. Because if you don't call it out when your friends are doing it, then you have no moral case to do it when your foes are doing it. And that's the big problem for the UK. The UK are currently complicit in what's happening in Gaza. And the refusal of the UK to even suspend arms sales to Israel is beyond belief. It's absolutely beyond belief. And that makes this government and this country utterly complicit.
Do you agree with David Tennant's recent statement towards Kenny Batendog? I think that's how you say her name. Excuse me if I got that wrong. To shut up over her plans to make biological sex a protected characteristic should the Tories retain power in Westminster.
I mean, first up, I don't think men should be telling women to shut up. I just don't. I think it's an incredibly bad look. I haven't really followed this. It happened this week, and as you can imagine, I've been out and about quite extensively this week. So I've heard about this, but I don't think men should tell women to shut up. I think Kemi Badenoch, in her role as the Equalities Minister, I think has been absolutely awful. I think she is part of that Conservative, she's stoking these culture wars. And I think that they have identified that this is an area where they can, put a wedge in. So I think there are ways to take on Kemi Badenoch which are probably a lot more acceptable than telling a woman to shut up. And I just wish, well, he may have been absolutely right in his sentiment. I think the expression of that sentiment has probably got in the way of what he was trying to say, and I just wish he'd maybe said it differently. I've got absolutely no truck with Kenny Badenoch whatsoever.
Anything final that you would want yourself to say to kind of flag yours?
I just think it is so important that, yes, we will never all agree on every dot and comma along the way, but our eventual aim is Scottish independence, and let's agree to disagree where we disagree, but let's not fall out about this. We need each other, because if we fall out and if we are not pulling in the same direction eventually towards independence, then the only people who will win are the unionists. We will look back and we will see ourselves as having been divided and conquered, and we can't let that happen. And so all of us, in my generation, who remember, joining when the party was at 8 to 10% in the polls, all that generation who, have experienced getting chased out of closes in Springburn, being yelled tartan Tories at, remember how far we've come. And these last yards are always going to be the hardest yards. But if we stick together, and as I said at the beginning, if we talk about independence, if we tie people's everyday lives and their experience to independence, and we're all in this together, then it will come. It will come. Weight of numbers will make this happen, and we will be an irresistible force. But let's do it together.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
speaking to